Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Planning for Decommissions. I'm Gary McCunis. I will be the moderator for today's panel. This topic of decommissioning is really important from a circular economy perspective. And I say that as a certified circular built environment specialist, recognized as a member of the expert group by the Circular Economy Institute. Circular Economy Institute is a strategic partner of IFMA, and together the Circular Economy Institute and IFMA have agreed to offer mutual benefits to our members, including training and certification. So if you have any questions about that, please contact me. We have two guest speakers today. I will introduce them very quickly, Emma Hobson and Adam Overall. Emma is a Senior Sustainability Manager at Ripley. She creates partnerships and networks in support of reuse initiatives, and she's a systems thinker. She spends her day answering the question how. Questions such as, how can we approach our next decommission project? How can we create a marketplace for our surplus assets? How can we scale our community impact across the globe? Always a step ahead, she's figuring out these how questions, and all the while maintaining a cool head and a steadfast commitment to circularity. Adam Overall is head of sustainability and operations at the Furniture Exchange, or TFX. Adam has led business operations since joining TFX in 2022. He's known for managing teams in complex, large-scale projects and plays a key role in driving the company's sustainability initiatives. Prior to TFX, he was with a global market research firm in the tri-state area, contributing significantly to managing their operations, environmental social governance, or ESG, and corporate social responsibility, or CSR programs. He's recognized for his commitment to sustainable practices and efficient operations, and solidifying his reputation as a valuable leader in the field. So please join me in welcoming Emma and Adam. Before I turn it over to them, I want to just introduce our agenda and what we'll be covering, and try to put this in the context of facilities management. So today we'll be talking about a handful of topics. One is we'll open with what are the trends in the market for corporate real estate and facilities management? How do decommissions, or where do decommissions fit into the circular economy, which I just mentioned? How do you plan for decommissions and donations of materials and from decommissioning? Share a few success stories from the field, and then hopefully we'll still have about 15 or so minutes for the audience to engage with us in any questions that we can address. The idea of how decommissions can fit into circular facilities, really, if you're familiar with circular economy at all, it's based on some very simple ideas of eliminating waste and pollution, keeping materials in use at their highest value longer, and recirculating those materials, and then ideally regenerating natural ecosystems. So three of the big areas as to how decommissioning fits into circular economy thinking is in materials usage. And not only do we want to think about recycling, but in circular economy terms, recycling is often what we call the loop of last resort. We really want to recover materials and repurpose them before we consider downcycling, and much prefer upcycling those materials. Secondly, we all are focused on decarbonization. We know that materials and products in facilities have a lot of embodied carbon, and we want to make sure that that is being thought of before we simply think of things as we have in the past of going directly to landfill. We want to think about landfill diversion and that whole carbon cycle, and reducing carbon footprint. And then lastly, from a procurement perspective, today we're talking about decommissioning at the end of life or end of service life of projects and facilities, but we want to think about sourcing materials and products upfront or upstream, and that certainly involves procuring fewer virgin materials, greater sourcing of recovered materials, and hopefully having an infrastructure in the economy that allows for that material exchange. So in today's title of the webinar, it mentions secret weapon. Whether you identify more with James Bond or Captain Planet or both, Today, we hope that you get a better sense of how to use decommissioning as a secret weapon. And with that, I'm going to ask Emma to open up with some trends. And I think we also have a poll for the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. And thank you all for the dedication of your time today. We are very excited to be here and have your time. And if you're here, it means you're in facilities most likely, and you have a lot of projects, or if not, you have a project coming up, and that means you have a lot on your plate. So we are excited to talk with you today and hopefully help out with those projects that are coming up. So we're going to talk today about some trends that we're seeing in decommission. So when we're talking about decommissions, we're referring to you have a lot of assets that you need out of your space for a myriad of reasons in a relatively short amount of time. Before we dive into the trends that we're seeing, we would love to hear from you. So as you guys know, there is a comment section. So please, as you have questions, as they arise, if this sparks anything, please let us know. For now, head to this poll where we can ask some questions about your experience with decommissions, what you have coming up. And yeah, if this sparks anything as well, please put your questions or comments in the comment section. So scan this code or go to www.menti.com and put in this number, and we will launch it soon. And I will master the art of how to fill some space for the next couple of minutes as you answer these questions. And maybe that's me just not talking. We'll see.
Yeah, I guess I can help you out there, Emma, a little bit. Certainly want to thank Gary and Emma for being part of this webinar, and everybody for sort of taking the time to sit down and listen to what we have to say. It's a very important topic and becoming more and more prevalent in what we're seeing, and what you'll hear from Emma shortly about trends and what we're seeing this year, just growing and growing in the decommissioning and the value it adds to a business.
Thanks, Adam. Everyone could tell I needed a little help there. Okay, so as you are accessing the poll, the first question, when was your last decommission project? Either one that you managed or the one that your company had to undergo. The results are coming in. This is riveting. So the options, if you had one in the last 3 months, in the last 6 months, in the last 12 months, in the last 18, or if your organization has not yet had a decommission project. No wrong answers here. In the last 3 months is the winner as of now. But also, there we go, neck and neck with you haven't had one yet, which is great. That's why we're here, and we are here to help. There is so much that comes with this process and project. And like I said earlier, it's one of many responsibilities that you have on your plate. So our job is to make it a bit easier. Let's head to this next question. If you have an upcoming decommission project, what's the timeline? So do you have one in the next 3 months? If you have one in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, or you don't have an upcoming one yet. And if that's the case, you're just here to get ahead of the curve, work ahead. Thanks everyone for participating and filling this out. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I know the FMA crew had it covered, but this is really insightful for us. Working with replay on your future decom. I love that. I would speak specifically to it, but I see LinkedIn user. But if we're already talking, I know who you are, and we can't wait. Okay, majority here is in the next 3 months, upcoming timeline. But majority being within this 3 to 12 month timeframe, which is very typical with what we see, and knowing that they are within the year and trying to get ahead of it. For those that, especially the 18 months, but for those that don't know of or have an upcoming decommission project yet, this is great. You can participate and take in all of this information. So when that time does come, because there's so much that is involved with it, you're going to be even more prepared. And then the third and final question, what prompted the need for your previous or upcoming decommission project? So is it because there was reduced budget, change in the hybrid or remote work? Did your company unfortunately experience layoffs? Did you have high interest rates? Or due to higher interest rates? We know that we all have high interest rates. Moving offices or other. And if it's other, throw in a short response if you can. Curtis, you said I could select one, but several categories apply.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, right? Because I think the hybrid and remote work is also a driver of moving an office to a smaller space. And it's a lot of what we see in the marketplace today.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is on par with what we are seeing and more so hearing from our current partners and those that we continue to work with. And I believe this wraps up the poll. We'll leave it open for 10 more seconds. Not to create a weird countdown. Okay, thank you, Curtis. That's really helpful. Great, thank you all. And that does lead us nicely into this current landscape and trends that are impacting facility teams today. I know that you are all well aware and can deeply relate that the last 3 to 4 years have turned the workplace on its head. So the pandemic ushered in a rise in hybrid and remote work that for many companies is here to stay. And that cuts down on demand for large office spaces and leads to decommissioning of those old spaces. At the same time, it also prompts the need for maybe new configurations of your space. So maybe it's not getting rid of that office space altogether, but the way that they see their office and want it configured is changing. Most recently, we've seen that high interest rates are driving decisions for developers and investors. So more often than not, those decisions are to do less and make do with less and to make the most out of what you already have. And we are seeing a trend in widespread layoffs. In 2022, this is in fact impacting large companies as much as it is the smaller tech companies that have dominated the headlines in recent months. But as we know, when there are layoffs, that means our space needs change and decommissions need to happen. So the reality is that 20% of office spaces in the US are sitting empty. And these trends indicate that the number may grow. So everything we've learned and experienced since 2020 will continue to serve us this year as we navigate ahead for all of you facility pros. So here's what we're seeing. In the conversations that we're having every day at Reaply, we know that this is true and that decommissions are hot on people's minds. A lot of you have one in the next 3 months, and we should chat. We would love to help. In fact, the last year we noted a massive uptick in the number of conversations we had with our customers that mentioned decommissions. Half of our business last year included decommissions, which is more than we've seen in the past. We know that our customers and the business we're talking with are planning for their decommissions now that are happening within the next year. And they're not some far off event in future, and in most cases. And we see that again in your poll responses, where majority of those decommissions, if you don't know about them yet, you're planning for those predominantly in the next 3 to 12 months. We also know that meeting deadlines and keeping costs at bay and managing them are the top priority. Of course, managing safe environments as well, being part of that. But cost and deadlines are always top of mind in all of these projects. And it's something we pride ourselves on and being able to deliver on. All right, so common pain points for decommissions. We've seen there's many, and keep those comments coming in. I would love to hear about your past experiences and the pain points that you've had, either in the process or the planning of one. But what we've seen and heard from our existing customers is three main things. The first are these hidden fees. So there's additional logistics and coordination that happen with decommission projects. And we pride ourselves on having a really comprehensive scope. And so there's nothing hidden and you don't have this bigger bill or cost at the end. Everything is upfront. When you have effective scoping of the entirety of the project and you have professionals that can ask the questions to ensure that there aren't additional costs at the end, that can keep those hidden fees at bay. There's a lot of time-sensitive deadlines. So you have these expensive fees if the space is not cleared on time and you have a lease that you have to honor. And it can get, it's difficult to put that in the trust of someone else, but when you can work with a provider and a foundational partner that can assure you that those deadlines are met, that can also remain at bay. And then the lack of data. Oftentimes when you're leading a decommission, especially with everything on your plate, you have a lot to do in a short amount of time, and you need those assets out of your space. And when you have partners that prioritize where they end up and can manage this complexity, it can be easier to access the data that you need or would like to see from your projects. So it is important to remember that these things are very much in control, especially if you have a solid planning foundation and more so a partner in place to support you and your organization in your decommission efforts. In particular, there are a couple of key metrics to keep top of mind as you're planning your conversations with decommission partners. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the work that Replay and TFX are doing and really priding ourselves on ensuring that we find the highest and next best use for every asset that we find and we work with. We do this through our platform and our network of partners, but we'll get into that. So as you approach your decommissions, you really should feel empowered to ask for the data from each project. So the first one is reuse rate, or the percentage of assets that were reused from your decommission. Thinking back to Gary's intro and the connection between facilities and the circular economy, this is one of the important first steps in having a more sustainable and circular approach to your decommission. This can mean reusing items externally through sales and donations and outside of your company, particularly when you're downsizing that space. It could also mean reusing assets and planning them internally and having all of the access and that data points, so knowing what are we wanting to reuse internally, and if we do not want them internally anymore, where are they ending up, and having an ownership of knowing where that reuse rate is. And how we achieve that reuse rate is by working with a number of recipient organizations. And it's a data point that we always provide at the end of our projects. Recipient organizations will continue to evolve. But right now, a lot of our clients are interested in working with, obviously, us and our reuse network and local businesses, but also our nonprofit organizations, and to facilitate the donations and the purchase of goods at a highly reduced rate or at no rate. So if you have any questions about the work that we do with donation partners, work that we've done with decommissions and the donation of those assets, ask me. It's my favorite part of my job. I love talking about it. So here to answer any questions about that. And by returning those valuable goods back to your local community, your organization can support the development of the local supply chain. All of this is provided back to you and at the end of a decommission, and is something that you should feel empowered to ask for. By way of those donations, you're not openly keeping those items in circulation, but you're also ensuring that that nonprofit, that local community organization, does not have to spend their limited budget on assets that already exist. And we have some cool examples of that coming up. And then you have, obviously, decommissions as a service. I've talked a lot about data points that you can ask for. There's a few more, but those are some key data points that you can ask for and the data that you can feel empowered to request. And now we need to talk about how you actually do that. So the anatomy of a typical decommission is this. Obviously, Adam, there's so much more, as we know, that is involved in the work that we do. But we bring a really cool complement together by providing technology and the execution to drive that visibility and ultimately the success. So you develop your decommissioning plan and you communicate that with your stakeholders. Reaply comes in and we can inventory all of your assets, and you can determine which ones you want to keep internal versus which ones you want to go for the decommission. And then you bring in our team to execute, and then we follow up with all of this data. At the end of the project, you get your space back in broom swept condition. Adam, if there's any other points, I'll let you take it away from here. But if there's any other points you want to conclude with, jump in.
No, I think you summed it up very well. I think the complement that our businesses bring in something like this is exactly that. The technology is what allows us to see that inventory and understand the assets that are involved in a decommission and start that path of where are they going to go. That's sort of sometimes the last question that gets asked, right? So between points 2 and 3 on the slide now is really where we harness both of our abilities to come in, give that direction, and then bring the teams in to just make it happen, right? And it's always done typically at the last minute. So it was interesting to see those polls earlier about 3 months and the scale going down. Hopefully after today, we can scale that the other way and have this information out there and start planning these decommissions. So the assets are going to, the highest and next best use. I think my CEO has become famous for saying an asset is an asset until it becomes a liability. So that's exactly what we try and do here to work together. It's $1 million question, right? And where do we start? Planning is the most pivotal and important part. And again, just reiterating time. The amount of time that we have to plan that and the information involved is really critical in what we're seeing. And sometimes we see that, we just don't have a lot of time, whether it's a landlord decision or a last minute business decision. So having all the information available either through Reaply's platform and understanding that will help us to sort of move these along. And then as we get into it, we're looking again at sort of what's happening in the world, what's happening in the US, and talking about those changes from whether it's hybrid or layoffs or office changes. Just in San Fran alone, you can see some pretty large numbers when you think about tenants in this year, I guess 2024, looking at reducing space. So not your real big players, but still 25%, 27%, sorry. And then when you get down into those smaller size companies that have the footprints of 100K or less, you're almost at half those businesses. And then when you take that and you think about, look, what's the San Fran market relative to, you can say San Fran's about 2 to 3% of the commercial real estate market across the domestic US. So when you start multiplying that out, we're seeing there's a lot of movement. And again, from the poll question, a lot of the people that are on the call today, when was your last decommission? In the last 3 months. So a lot of movement over the last 6 months. Even for us at TFX, you can say Q1 is typically the quietest month, and we are flat out. So there's plenty of it out there. People are moving, businesses are shaping, redesigning and shaping. So definitely what we see out there right now is people moving, and a lot of it. Checklist. I was only allowed to put one slide in here, but I think our checklist is about 7 pages long. So again, as Emma said, reach out after this, and we're happy to work together to help that. But trying to look at them pretty simplistically. When you're relocating, and again, those poll results showed people moving around, what are you going to reuse? It's the first place, and the next best use is it's your asset. Where are you going to use it in a new space? Can you use it in a new space? Does it fit the space, the design? So identifying those assets within your inventory and understanding those, and understanding the timing of that. So your new space, is it going to be ready? Are we going to be able to get out of the old space in time to make sure that those assets go to the new space in time? Do you need someone like us to hold that furniture and dismantle it, hold it, keep it? Because the value it brings by reusing far exceeds other options that are out there. What are you refurbishing and reselling? What percentage play is it? Again, it's sort of creating that disposition plan when you start thinking about a decommission. It's not just, I've got to be out of this space by tomorrow. What am I going to do to get out, and how am I going to do it? What percentage of the furniture and which items in that list are going to be reused by us, you as the tenant. What can I remanufacture? We here at TFX, we're happy to take that furniture and work and remanufacture it and give it a new lease on life. Again, continuing that circular economy. And what's the value driver of that? You know, if it's going to be resold, reused, where's the value lie, and understanding that in the overall cost of the project. And then again, what can you donate? And I think ultimately this bucket is really, what do you do with what's left? And that's one of the biggest questions that we get when we come into a project together is like, what can I do with it? So understanding, again, as Emma just talked about, the donations obviously are a big player in that. And we're seeing more of that where it's built into companies, whether it's ESG or CSR, corporate social responsibility. That's now a metric that a lot of companies have to hit. So doing these decommissions in a way where we're planning that, we can start putting the credit where credit's due. And again, what's the timing and what's the volume? You know, working personally with a lot of charities around, especially in the Northeast, how many office chairs can one place take? So making sure that when we're down to that last minute in the decommission project, we're not turning up at Habitat with 7 trailers of chairs. We've had that time, we've planned that out, and we've found that next home for them. And that's whether it's donations or what can we remanufacture. I mean, it's what our business is built on, is making sure that it doesn't go into a landfill. It goes into a place where it can be remanufactured and given a new life and turned around and used for many, many years on top. So, and then ultimately what's left? I think it's inevitable in any project that you take on. There's a percentage that's either, you know, held together with sticky tape and zip ties, or there's things that just don't have another home. So taking those again and then breaking them down again and understanding what's in that, what components, what can be recycled, how's it going to be recycled. So just understanding that when you're planning out your decommission is a crucial part of the whole process. And then landfill diversion. It's another, I guess, I don't want to call it a buzzword because it's a very important word, but it's a word that's coming up more and more when we see decommissions. We're not just taking things out and getting rid of them and clearing the space. It's understanding of that percentage that's left, where's it going and how is it being handled? So obviously with the reuse, the remanufacture, the donations, it's not going anywhere near a landfill. Like it's staying clean, but then understanding what part of that recycling and how we do it, and making sure that you work with a partner and a contractor that can give you that end-to-end custody chain of control and show that to you, and then say, hey, look, this 26% in this example, this is how we recycled it. We took it to this location. It was used for this purpose. You can see exactly where every piece of your overall decommission has gone and understand it in a way where it's reportable and manageable and palatable, really. And then what's look for a partner? I think, again, it's back to what Emma said before. It's, our partnership is one that I'm very proud of, and it's been a great one that we've had together, that it really combines the technology side of the world, which gives the visibility to you guys as the client, and understanding your assets, and then us as the team that can come in and actually help to execute and deliver on that. And, we've built our business over 26 years of that, extending the life of furniture. That's what it's all about for us, making sure it stays out of landfill. And by doing that, as Emma said, it's from start to finish. It's you bring us collectively in at the start, and then we're right there with you until that last piece of furniture has a new home or it's recycled. And again, Repley's inventory management gives us a great insight into a project and gives you a great insight. Again, we drive everything we can to reuse and remanufacture. It's the first 2 buckets, and it takes the greatest percentage of all the projects we do. We did personally over 2,000 decommissioning projects last year, and what came out of them and what went back out the door for a new life is quite remarkable. So having those capabilities in a decommission partner is a really important choice when you make that choice. And then again, just delivering on the end result is saying, look, this is what we did. Here's the proof. Here's the understanding. You can see where it went, what your project did, and how you contributed to a better planet, really, throughout the entire process. always good to talk about these in a little bit more context. So we've had many. As I said, we've had 2,000. We've done plenty in partnership with Ripley. So one of our best, and definitely one that I was lucky to be a part of. Huge firm in the city here in New York, and across 3 buildings. So you can just see, just by the sheer volume of weight, there's 40-something floors. It was one that we were able to exceed 90% of the product coming out of the decommissioning was kept out of landfill. So when you're talking about 3 buildings and 33 floors, you can just imagine the volume of furniture. And this one was done in a way where using what we've talked about. It was planned 18 months in advance. It was spec'd out. The homes for the reuse were found 6 to 8 months before we even had a truck or a person on the premise. And then a lot of that was really laid out well. And in the end, it ran like a very seamless project. And, to do that in 45 business days with that size square footage, again, it's back to choosing that right supplier and choosing that preferred partner, having the information there and having the resources and having the teams and the expertise to make sure that that can happen. Again, a lot of the decommissions that were in the results of the polling were in the next 3 months. So making sure you've got the capacity, the equipment, and the experience to make sure that we, as partners to you, can get you out of your office space in the time that you need. Emma, I think you had.
Yeah, really cool, Adam. Thanks for that. And this continues that trend. Another example, but in Houston, to also show that we work across the U.S. So this is a project that we had. It was a Houston-based company, and they had an upcoming decommission, and they sought us out because they knew that there was a better way to do it and more information that they could get at the end of a decommission. And so they asked to work with us, which was great. The decommission, the total weight of the decommission was very similar to the Adams example, over 720,000 pounds on that project. And majority of that was saved from the landfill because we were able to maximize all reuse opportunities. And we were able to keep some of those assets for them internally by providing that visibility to them and having some of their team members say, wait, we need that. We need that on this next floor that we have over there. Can I take that table? Didn't know you had that. And we also were able to facilitate some donations as part of that work. And we also provide not only that report, but the value of that donation and those receipts back to our client. And that was, I think, a value of $35,000 in donation value for that local nonprofit. The next example is a really cool one. Again, here in the city, we were working with an investment banking firm, and they had a good amount of chairs, over 1,600 chairs, that they said, we do not want these anymore. They're from 2009, and we're getting our team brand new chairs. I said, okay. And they said, we're going to throw them away. But if you can help us find new homes for them, we would love that. And so we got to work. We inventoried the chairs onto our platform, sent them out to our suite of partners. And we had a lot of partners say, wait, these chairs are available and for free. We had one university say to us, we're sitting on chairs since the 70s. We can have these, and took over 200 of them. There were some chairs, a good amount of those, that did need a little bit of love. And TFX was such a great partner in this entire project. This slide isn't up to date, but when we send them out after this, there's a brilliant before and after photo of these chairs and really the work that they do in remanufacturing. But we sent them the listing on our platform. Said, is there any support that you can provide here? And to Adam's delight, yes, he loves these chairs and brought them into their warehouse and really extended their life by way of giving them a little bit of remanufacturing love. And by way of that, you also get the 3-year warranty, and they promise that to all of their buyers, 3-year warranty. So not only does it extend the life right away, but also if something happens to that chair for whatever reason, you can go back to them and they can repair whatever is needed. So that just continues to extend the life. But that's a really fun example because it shows all of the routes and the efforts that we do to live up to ensuring that we meet all assets to their highest and next best use. And really the power of our network and the power of technology and having visibility around all of your assets. and of course, the time to be able to exhaust all options. But regardless of time, we do what we can to meet all assets at their highest and next best use. And now, for the fun part, we get to have a bit of dialogue here.
Yeah, and thank you, Adam and Emma, for that overview. There's a lot to digest there. We wanted to leave a lot of time for our audience to let us know what's on their minds. And Jack and Jen in the background, I'm not sure if you see any questions or comments coming in from the audience, but one I'll start with for Emma and Adam. It seems like a lot of decommissioning is in part due to the obligation of a tenant to a landlord to return space to original condition. But beyond that obligation, I think we're seeing some market and regulatory forces happening, as you said, from New York City and all across the U.S. What are you seeing at a local level in terms of what municipalities are allowing during commissioning or decommissioning? And what was permissible in the past of turning an eye and being blind to what goes in the landfill versus being very aware of that now and having to report on it. What are you seeing in terms of that rate of regulation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, and it does come into play. Almost every week it changes, right? And that's one of the hard, challenging parts of my role, is understanding what part of the country we're working in and what assets do we have to decommission and where are they going. So when you go to those, you're down to that low percentage of products that are going to a recycling or a refuse center, is understanding those restrictions. Obviously, you've got your leaders in California, your New Yorks are sort of leading the way in this industry, but in this particular topic, very simply put, I think to build on your point of turn a blind eye, one of the simplest way to put it is just the separation of the material. Before, it was a little bit more acceptable to put it all in a box and drop the box off and you were done. Now it's breaking apart your types of metal, understanding that you've got a truck full of copper, a truck full of steel, a truck full of aluminum, and making sure that they're going to the correct facility to handle that particular product. And the combination of materials, whether it's fabrics, if we see those on chairs and panels in cubicle systems, is having those separated and processing them the right way so they're getting the maximum recycling value that they have. But ultimately, yeah, a very challenging part of our industry is understanding and making sure we're processing things for recycling in the right way.
Yeah, and on the point of separability, a lot of that issue has to do with, how have materials been assembled and put together, and what materials do we find that are now contaminated by things like adhesives that cannot be separated. So while we're talking about decommissioning as sort of a downstream activity, if you think about an upstream activity called the design stage, where like probably 80% of these issues are decided as to what their fate will be at the end of service life. We're seeing this with chairs being designed by manufacturers that are sort of planned for disassembly and planned for remanufacture. No downcycling or recycling, but a lot of upcycling and repurposing. What tips, based on what you're actually finding in the field at the stage you enter a facility and discover how it was put together, what tips would you have for our audience to consider during design and especially during procurement?
Yeah, you're right. It's been an interesting factor on that. The other half of TFX from the decommissioning side is that remanufactured and reused furniture, right? So we've adjusted a lot of what we're doing to use the recyclable materials when we do the remanufacturing. So number one tip and self-plug would be to try and use remanufactured furniture in your design phase. And we are seeing a bit more of that actually, where big design firms are being asked to use a percentage of their new builds as remanufactured or reused. So that's contributing to it. But just, taking the time to understand what materials you're using. Some of the big leaders, the Herman Millers and the Knowles of the furniture world are now putting out a lot more information about what their furniture is comprised of and how it's being put together. But it's definitely a factor in the design phase of it, is trying to, again, reuse what you have, the asset that you have, keep it as an asset and use it as long as you can.
Yeah. And to that end, reusing what you have and working with trusted partners that prioritize that reuse. And TFX certainly leading the way in that and being able to design your space with that in mind. And it's seeking out those partners and those options and knowing that they are available. So Reaply, for example, has a marketplace where you can find reused furniture for your office spaces, and also working with partners such as TFX, so you can design your whole space out and purchase, pre-owned remanufactured materials.
And earlier you mentioned, the importance of reporting and metrics. There's a question here from Curtis. What do you see from your clients as an acceptable percentage of cost increase for repurposing FF&E as compared to the cost of dumping into a landfill? I'm not sure if have you had that metric reported before?
No, not specifically. Just trying to think of that as a cost increase for repurposing FF&E. It's hard. It's sort of a hard question to answer for me. I mean, I think we very simplistically we look at from the design phase, right? The cost of new versus the cost of remanufactured. And we see that as, we average around half the price of using our remanufactured furniture versus that. Dumping in landfill, again, don't love that word, but Curtis certainly understand the point. The processing costs of recycling and taking care of that. It hasn't been a big issue for us, and I think we illustrate that to our clients and say, look, this is the cost, and you do pay a little bit more, right? You do pay a little bit more to process this stuff properly, especially when you're working with nationwide clients who have locations in smaller parts of the country. Access to good quality recycling plants is very limited. So you start to like, well, all right, well, what's it going to cost me to take care of this material properly? And we've actually seen quite a few of our clients who are quite okay with paying that extra, and just understanding that, look, if I pay extra, I'm doing the right thing with the product.
Mm-hmm. Something to add, especially if this is for decommission projects, and something that we really pride ourselves on is keeping these costs at bay and providing a truly competitive price. I know everyone says that, but it is true for us and the work that we lead, because this is what we do and how we present ourselves. So for some organizations, they might charge more because they have to find all of these different avenues. And for organizations like Reaply and TFX, this is at the core of what we do. And we provide really competitive pricing. So the right thing and the option you choose are the same. I just got off a call with a decommission client, and we are going to help them with their space is about 75,000 square feet. And he admittedly was very taken aback at the quote that we provided. Said, I thought with getting all of this reporting and data that I would have to pay more. And that's really something that we pride ourselves on and want to encourage is you not only should be able to have access to this information, you should have it at an affordable rate. And that's what we do.
Yeah, and I think also, behind your questions and answer here, there's also, at least for the time being, there's probably not cost parity or price parity, assuming that it's less expensive to go to landfill versus to recover and repurpose and redistribute. I think we're going to expect to see those landfill costs going much higher, and we will see price parity, and also a lot of accounting issues about responsible practices as far at the end of life of any product or service, that what has been conveniently called by the accounting world as externalities, basically meaning waste and pollution that you don't have to account for, are now becoming things that are being expected, especially with ESG reporting and the SEC getting more involved with the US companies and how they report on those things. So I think that's the dynamic over time we're going to see. Emma, I guess a question for you. You mentioned earlier that you bring the value of a network, especially through the technology platform. Can you explain more about what does that platform include and how does it work and who's on the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. And we should set up a demo for another call. That'd be great. But in a nutshell, I do see that there's another question here about donations and decommission projects. So I can answer both at the same time. But certainly, our technology is the core of everything that we do, and the network that we are able to facilitate and bring together to truly enable a circular economy. We do this in a myriad of ways, and it starts with outreach, good old-fashioned outreach. And I say I have the best job at Reaply over and over again. And our technology makes it really easy for me to do a good job and to love my job, because we have items that need a new home, and I get to send, so all of that inventory happens on platform, and I get to send this information, the inventory that we have available, out to local partners. It is important to note that if an organization, if you're listening to this and you say, well, that would be nice, but we can't donate to X, Y, and Z, you can set up those parameters on your platform. We can lead this effort entirely for you. But if you say we cannot donate to organizations that resell, for example, that was the latest that just came up. Great, we will build your preferred network based on those parameters. But more often than not, organizations just want to donate their assets to local community organizations and schools, and seeing where that impact is and how the items were reused. That example I shared earlier was really unique in the sense that it had so many moving parts at once, with a donation and a remanufacturing partner. Two come to mind, and I can't pick my favorite, but these two come to mind because they were the most recent. There was a project that we helped facilitate in Atlanta. This client was undergoing a decommission. They were leaving these 2 floors and of the office building and moving entirely and downsizing, and they didn't want to take any of their furniture. And they said, you can try and find as many donation opportunities as possible. This is our deadline. So if you can't find any, we will need to remove them in this time frame, which we always do. And we were able, there was 1,156 assets. You know that I'm going to count every single asset because there's a lot of love that goes into each and every project. But we had over 1,100 assets, and we were able to find a donation opportunity with the DeKalb County School District and donate every single piece of furniture to that school district and ensure that it stays in circulation. And we know that teachers oftentimes are pulling, out of their own pocketbook to pay for items. And it was really great to be able to not only ensure that these are reused, but reused with a local school district. There's another project that we just wrapped up, and I'm excited to talk about more formally soon, but it was in San Francisco, and one office had all of their inventory on platform. They looked through, which is exceptional for them. This client looked through the inventory they had because they were designing out a new space, and they were able to use our platform to see, okay, what do we already have that we can use in our new design plans? That effort alone, what they were not doing before having this technology. But after they took in to their designs and were able to keep some of those assets internally, they still had over 400 assets that they need a new home for. And oftentimes you have to find a couple of partners instead of having 400 different donation partners. How can we make this seamless for the client and for us? And we were able to find an amazing organization in Los Angeles that were building homes for housing insecure families and communities. And all of that furniture from this office space in San Francisco is going directly into all of those homes. So you see why I love my job.
Adam, we see a question for you referring to the 2,000 decommissions you did last year. What were the common themes you saw coming from all those customers?
Interesting. I'll throw one I saw Cassandra's question there. Interesting and challenging. Firstly, I'll just throw one of those in on the back of Emma. I think one of our most interesting and unique challenges we were faced with. It was a while ago now, but we actually were the decommission partner for the Waldorf Hotel in New York City. And every single door from that project was taken off the hinges and actually sent to Africa for use in housing. So the logistics involved in that back then was definitely made it one of the most interesting ones that we've done. Of the 2,000 last year, it's very similar to what the poll results were. I think, since 2000, 2001, it's been that shrinking of space and redesigning, and seeing a lot of our clients, they were all last minute. I'll say majority of those were last minute. So it's just very quick changes in real estate was the ultimate theme and what was driving it. And a lot of those 2,000, I think we looked back at what we took in from those 2,000. Over half of those, half of the inventory of that was reused straight into remanufacturing. So yeah, common theme was adjustments in space and redesign and release.
So thinking about where these assets go and how these materials flow, apart from what cities may be regulating, it also seems that there's some pretty creative and innovative efforts at the local levels for creating an infrastructure that the circular economy relies on that the linear economy didn't put in place, right? So for example, places to store, places to, upgrade or upcycle, places to redistribute. I'm thinking of some of the materialist exchanges like we're seeing in cities like Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And are you relying on these more and more? Are you seeing these pop up in more cities? These are really local initiatives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they are a vital part of our ecosystem of partners. So when I'm talking about the network of partners, it's not just the nonprofits. While they are a prominent piece of our network, it's also all of those organizations that you mentioned, Gary, those that are focused in materials and that are enabling the circular economy through their work, having them come on platform and exchange with each other and be recipients for items, especially when we get down to the materials of items. So, okay, that chair is no longer good. Kind of, Adam, how you said it earlier, when things are zip tied together. But can we take the fabric off of that and reuse that, right? So it's being able to have access to this network of partners, and we need everyone to be on our platform, to be recipients and participants. But certainly they are a vital part of ours. And I'm happy that you mentioned Atlanta. They're doing some great work there. And we're forming some really cool partnerships with them to continue to facilitate this work.
Yeah, and while today we're probably focused more on commercial properties, I know even at the residential level, cities like San Antonio and Portland, Oregon, I know Evanston outside of Chicago, they're really getting serious about redistributing and recycling these materials. We have less than 10 minutes left. I know we want to leave a few minutes at the end to share some links so people can download some recent reports that have a lot of this information organized. Any other questions from the audience, Cassandra? I guess one question I want to come back to, it came up in the polling. Adam, you mentioned it in terms of a common theme. These things come in at the last minute. They seem to be in a bit of a rush. With so many of our audience saying that they have decommissioning projects coming up in just 3 to 6 months, I know there are scale issues at play here, but what are your thoughts, Emma and Adam, about how far in advance do you need to orchestrate and plan for, a project 3 to 6 months out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part you touched on is that there's scale questions here, right? Or scale evaluation that you need to do. But look, we, in the pragmatic guide that you'll see a link to shortly, I mean, I think 3 months is a bare minimum, depending on the size of your space, to have your partners selected and to be thinking about, right, I've got my partners, I understand my inventory, and obviously the bigger the scale of the space that we're talking about, the more you can. So at a minimum, 12 to 16 weeks is when you should be having those conversations with your partners saying, right, we're ready to go. So, part of our job as a partner to you is to run through all of those challenges you'll face 3 to 6 months. And some of those things we often see when we have those conversations, they're just things that people aren't always thinking about. Elevator schedules, access to the building, can I get out in time? Will I have enough trucking? And where's my trucking coming from? So allowing that sort of 12 to 16 weeks gives you the confidence as the tenant, look, I am going to get out, and I am going to be able to hand my space back in the right condition.
Yeah. All that being said, you know that we've taken on projects with 1-2 months time. Obviously, they're not that easy, and there's always caveats to each. But we have accepted projects because you do have that deadline that you're facing, and you have to get out in that amount of time. And that's why we really pride ourselves on doing such comprehensive scoping. So getting you set up for success, asking all of the questions. And if you don't know the answers to them, we work with you to find those answers so we can get you that quote and deliver for you to ensure you're out of that space, and giving you that report at the end. So yes, and
yeah, I got one this morning that we have to do by the end of the month. So
Yeah.
You're right. We always do it. But I think, again, having partners, we pride ourselves and we build ourselves on having our own trucking, our own labor, and all those sort of things. So when you call partners like us, that it's us that's doing the work too. I think that's a very reassuring factor. And almost back to the theme question, a lot of what we saw last year was people coming to us together collectively because we were the ones executing the project. We were delivering for you. We had it all internal. We controlled everything. We controlled every piece of that decommission was managed through us as partners directly with you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one thing to add is that oftentimes when organizations are managing their decommission, they feel like they have to have so many different partners. But Adam, I'm thinking about just some of the projects that we've even done recently where there's electrical work that's needed. Yep. So that's why we're scoping out the project, and we can bring in all of the specialist and, being that lead in that, ensuring that the entirety of the project is covered and that you will fully get out of your space with knowing what's on hand. And we wouldn't be good hosts if we didn't leave you all with some gifts at the end. So we do have two reports for you that we will send out. There is the resource and our sample impact report. So what you can expect to receive after your decommission is complete. And then the TFX team has a tremendous guide. Adam, you want to tell the audience about that?
Yes, actually hot off the press. Kay actually compiled and completed yesterday. So we put together, again, taking what we've talked about today and again, the 26 years of experience, and just try to put that pen to paper in a way that we can give it out to our clients and prospective clients, just to say, here, look, take a read of this. These are the pain points. These are the thoughts that you should have when you're planning out a decommission. And even it touches on the full circular economy. So chapters on decommissioning, and then the value of remanufacturing furniture and using those assets over the new white box stuff. So fresh off the press today, grab your copy and have a read.
Okay, well, thank you, Emma, and thank you, Adam, for sharing your insights today. I know that we covered a lot, and I think these reports that are now available will share more about best practices and new measures and metrics. And so I want to also thank the audience for joining us today, wherever you are in the US or elsewhere, whatever time remains in your day, make the most of it. And we hope to see you on a future IFMA webinar. Thank you all.